Hey everybody, this is Rob Kientz at 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙑𝙀𝙍. It is Thursday, November 11th, 2021. And because of all the financial news that's going on, I got together a very special roundtable. Three of my favorite guests. We have Chris from Financial Fitness, Andy Schectman from Miles Franklin, David Morgan of the Morgan Report. Gentlemen, how are you doing this morning?
Good to be here, Rob.
Doing well, Rob.
Always good to see you guys.
Special thanks to Dave for joining at the last minute. He and Andy were talking this morning on the phone, said he would join us. He may have to go a little bit early, but we definitely wanted to get him involved here as he's been tracking these markets for a very long time. So I'll start with you, David. Lots of news yesterday. Evergrande blew up. They defaulted on their debts. Downgrades on three other property developers by Fitch, Moody's, and S&P. We had CPI hit 6.2%, the 30-year high. And then I think you also had some additional news about Tether and their relation to Evergrande as well.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. First of all, the fact that both Vanguard and BlackRock were involved with Evergrande is very, very significant because those are the two biggest wealth holders probably in the world, but at least in the U.S. And then on top of that, this is an educated guess / conjecture. I don't have any visible proof yet, but I've got enough deep sources that have convinced me to question whether or not Tether is involved with commercial paper from Evergrande. And if they are, then that puts the whole Tether question into further, let's say, jeopardy. Possible jeopardy, I should say.
Yeah, Tether's interesting. We had Karian von Hest on our program. He's literally a savant at analyzing the cryptocurrencies. He goes by 𝙄𝙊𝙇𝙇𝙊𝙒 online, a gamer who actually happens to be very well self-educated in the markets. He's pointed out where there was an quote unquote audit report of Tether, which wasn't done by an actual audit firm. It was done by a partner of Tether that had an existing business relationship, so it wasn't legitimate. But what was found out from that audit and from subsequent analysis is that Tether's not backed by dollars like it's supposed to be. So pinning it to the dollar is falsehood because it's not backed by dollars. It owns Bitcoin, it speculates in Bitcoin, and it owned other quote unquote liquid assets that Tether admitted to. If it turns out that Tether owns Evergrande, that just blows the entire Tether equation up, doesn't it?
It does, and I think to go one step further, and this can be verified, is what's in this bill in Congress, this infrastructure bill, which of course includes all kinds of stuff that no one ever talks about. And if it looks like the regulators are coming down really hard on the whole crypto space, and if this is passed, there's going to be literally an overnight change of how things are accounted for. One of them being, as you mentioned, Rob, what is backing the Tether situation, and that means does it have to meet like the FDIC requirements? In other words, if they say they have $1, they have to prove they have $1. They have to prove they have 100% coverage. If that's true, then we may see something that's very disruptive to the crypto space, maybe momentarily or maybe further than that.
Yeah, I would think that would call into question whether cryptos are actually, whether stable coins or not. Tether's a stable coin backed by something. Stablecoin is a crypto backed by something, right? So that would call into question not only stable coins, but the entire crypto complex, I would think. Andy or Chris, do you have thoughts on that?
When I hear all of this, and Dave and Chris, what I think of immediately is the systemic nature of all of these players and the interconnection, how one domino falls and what it does to the rest of the dominoes. And I think when you see major financial institutions like BlackRock involved in Tether, what does it portray for the rest of the U.S. financial system when everything blows up? And I think when you take a look at all of the preemptive measures that have been made already in terms of gating money markets and bail-ins, and as David mentioned, the new tax bill, 77,000 or something like that, new IRS auditors. They're definitely looking at cryptos, I think. We've been told that in that bill, anyone who purchases crypto for precious metals will have to be Form 8300 if it passes, which is an excess cash form in the real world right now. Now they're more or less focusing squarely on people's ability to maintain anonymity. But in particular, I think the systemic nature, the interconnection of all these players, always searching for some sort of yield, some sort of return, ignoring risk, has created a very big problem. And when one of these falls, one of these big institutions fall, I think it could create quite a problem that we don't even see right now because of the interconnectivity, because of the systemic nature of all of these big players that have forever been tossing risk to the wind and looking for some sort of a return. And when it blows up, I think there'll be unintended consequences that people don't see.
So let's talk about the risk environment now after yesterday. We've talked about Evergrande a little bit. We can go more into that. Evergrande defaulted yesterday formally on its $148 million bond payment. Also, offshore bondholders are reporting they didn't receive the previous payment. So Evergrande, and now I think their founder's pledging his mansions, his real estate in a last minute attempt. The Chinese have put their think tanks on it to determine how to best deal with the financial problem, which means the Chinese government is taking it extremely seriously. And I also think the Chinese have asked their state-owned entities, which are basically corporations that are an amalgamation with the state, to bail out Evergrande, Senate, 𝙂𝙍𝙊𝙇𝙑, and all of these companies are blowing up in the property development sector. So China is doing everything possible short of just bailing directly out Evergrande to deal with the situation. Then yesterday, at the same time, we had the CPI print, 6.2% year over year in October, highest in 30 years. So that it seems like we're now risk on. There's risk in the environment. Chris, what's your take on what's going on right now in the economy? And what should people be doing?
Oh man, everything's happening at once.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. The crypto's going up, the bond market's imploding, you got the Evergrande contagion starting to spill all over everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like the problem with shipping is getting worse. And a lot of people have already made adjustments, and now we're going to have a glut of stuff show up out of these, I forget, 150 ships off the coast of California.
Mm-hmm.
All of that together with the Tether. Now that's incredible, because Tether is more of the same. It's more of nothing. It's just, if that goes, then that might be a really big nail in the coffin of crypto for now. Now it might be a great buying opportunity when it happens. But man, you name it, it's all happening. What's the fertilizer thing? Have y'all been hearing about the fertilizer issue?
Mm-mm.
Man, check this out. Brazil's government saying they don't know what they're going to do. India's saying they don't know what they're going to do. They do not know how they're going to grow crops. We're expecting next year to have a global starvation. I'll just say, Brazilian president said, "I'm warning you a year in advance, due to the energy crisis, China began producing less fertilizer and the prices have already gone up. It will go up more and there will be a shortage." It's all happening at one time, guys.
Supply chain issues and fertilizer due to economic and energy issues in China, right? It's interesting how interconnected the globe is, Chris. When you look at that, you can't just look at the US market. You can't just look at China. You have to look at the interrelation between all of them, from a supply chain perspective, from a debt perspective, from a currency perspective. So if Evergrande blows up, that's going to reverberate throughout the whole system, right? And if the cryptocurrency blows up, this question's for David. If the cryptocurrency blows up, what happens to gold and silver? Are people going to come back to gold and silver?
I believe they will, Rob. And also want to add to what Andy said. The systemic risk is something that's plagued my mind for decades. But to keep it real simple, and Chris, this is a compliment, but to just take it as gut honest as Chris is, it's counterparty risk. One thing that most people don't think about in the crypto space is counterparty risk. And you don't have counterparty risk when you have gold coins or bars, silver coins or bars in your own possession. It eliminates it. And no one's going to understand counterparty risk until something blows up. And then you're going to understand it to the depths of your being, because that's the one thing that I'm not saying would be, but could be left standing. Now, where this crypto thing goes, I don't know, but it's always best to be ahead of the pack rather than a follower. You want to be out in front. You want to be watching. You want to be seeing what's taking place or the potential that's taking place. So I'm suggesting to my subscribers, because we have been in the crypto space, that you want to be very, very careful at this juncture. And the reason I called Andy this morning is I want to have a little chat about what he did with 𝙃𝙀𝙍𝙊𝙎 and Marty on crypto viewing. And I won't go into that any further, but I think Dick is very smart in so many ways. I think it was a very good service for them to suggest that if you've got some pretty good profits in the crypto space, diversification is something that could be applied here, and especially with these unknowns around Evergrande, the housing market, the shipping, the fertilizer. I mean, I've been screaming about food. I'm off topic, but I've been screaming about food like a year and a half ago, and everyone was turning off my channel. Now, they're kind of dialed in, but regardless, Rob, back to you.
So Andy, yesterday we saw gold and silver spike on the news of inflation and started trend down, and then Evergrande, I think, sunk into the minds of people. Now it's trending up again today, yesterday afternoon again today. We're holding the critical 2450 support level, paper spot price level in silver, which is key. If we stay above 2450, I think we're on to 28. So we'll see what silver ends up this week. But one of our subscribers tracks 𝙂𝙂 Sales, big online dealer, more sales yesterday than they had in a previous month at 𝙂𝙂 in terms of silver. What are you seeing in terms of silver at Miles? Is silver doing very well? Is gold doing well?
So, yeah, first, before I answer that, let me just say in regards to crypto that in the past 2 months, I have received from more people with 6 and 7 figures of crypto calling me, talking about converting their cryptocurrency into precious metals. All of them say the same thing somewhere near the year's end. They're all expecting a generational run up in price and some sort of a correction / game-changing event towards the end of the year. I hear this every single day, and I bet you we've already done 8 figures worth of conversions out of cryptocurrencies in the past 3 weeks. So I think when you talk about, first of all, when you talk about cryptocurrency, for a long time, it was either or. It was pitted against one another. The people who appreciated cryptocurrency didn't appreciate gold. And I think the more that they've come to understand what cryptocurrency is, in essence, a short on the dollar, have realized that there is a symbiotic relationship between it and precious metals. And when they look at the landscape around them, they see these tremendous profits they've made in cryptos. They see equity markets up off the charts. They see a bond market that continues to defy gravity. Even when they talk about tapering, bond market continues to move up because, well, that's a whole nother story, probably related to the fact they don't believe that Powell will be reappointed. But I digress. The point of it is simply this, is that there is an awakening. These people understand what is happening with the dollar and see value in gold and silver that they don't see anywhere else. And there is a transition underway. In terms of silver, I have been sounding the alarm early as usual for over a year. And I've been saying this market will run out of product. And I say that to you because, and I'm glad David's on the phone here or on the call, because in 2008, David will remember, everything disappeared. Everything disappeared. And that's when silver went from 21 to 9. And if it weren't for David calling me about friends of his in the medical device industry, a company called Pyromet, no one in the industry, nobody would have had anything to sell for months. And at the end of 08, when the amount of demand is a sliver of what it is now, the entire industry ran out of product. Silver fell from 21 to 9. Gold fell from 1,000 to 700. You would think everyone was dumping everything that they had, but it was a paper-derived smashdown. And when that happened, within 3 weeks, everything across the globe was gone. The US Mint, the Canadian Mint, the South African Mint, the Perth Mint, the UK Mint, all the refiners, all the distributors had nothing. I thought I was going out of business. As a US Mint authorized reseller, I would call them and they'd say, we'll let you know when you can do something. And by the grace of God, David called me and other dealers out there and said, I got some buddies who want to get in the industry. They have all this silver, but they've been taking it out of the back of x-ray machines for the past 20 years. They got, all this silver. They're going to make 100-ounce bars. That was the only thing the industry had to sell for months on end. And this is when no one was buying gold and silver in 08. If you take a snapshot or a comparison to what it was then versus what it is now, it was kindergarten versus graduate school in terms of demand. And so I have been saying all along that this market is on the razor's edge. It's on the tip of the spear. And when people wake up, whether it be the crypto people, whether it be the people who are looking at their equity account saying, my God, how did we make this much money in the last year and a half? Look at the economy, it just doesn't resonate. When they start to transition even a little bit into precious metals, it will disappear. I've been saying that for over a year now. And when I look at my inventory right now, United Kingdom Britannias, South African Krugerrands, Austrian Philharmonics, the Australian Kangaroo, all of them 2 weeks back ordered. I had between 50 and 75,000 ounces of each a month ago. US Eagles premiums are going to the moon and have been for quite some time. The Royal Canadian Mint on allocation. The UK Mint running out of silver blanks. This market will be defined by no product. 3 weeks ago, we sold 600,000 ounces of silver in 1 week. That's something I never thought would have even been possible. Rob, I'm telling you, stuff is disappearing and it is going to only get worse. As far as I'm concerned about it. And I think anyone who has been sitting on the sidelines waiting for an opportune time to get in, yeah, you may see a better time to get in, you may not. But anyway that I look at it, it will come to focus more on the availability of product, regardless of what the price does, than anything else. It is singularly the most difficult part of my job right now. We have 2 full-time employees working literally 24 hours a day. One works in North America time zone. One gets up in the middle of the night and deals with the UK, with South Africa, with Austria, with Australia. Trying to continue to get product, you have to buy it 3, 4, 5 weeks in advance, 6 weeks in advance. 3 months in advance. You have to pay up front. You have to hedge it. If you don't have the ability to do that, you're dead in the water. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. So yes, our silver sales more than gold is off the charts. And if anyone is looking for the tipping point, it is when gold becomes unobtainium. Right now, silver is getting close to that. Not quite, but getting there. When it happens with gold, when you see gold start flying off the shelf, of all the online companies, that's when you should really, really get concerned. And you know that we're at the 12th hour in terms of supply in this industry.
So what happens? Let me jump in here because so they pay for it. The price of gold runs down and then it's just you can't get it no matter what the price is, right?
Right. That's exactly what happened. When in that example in 08, at the end of the year, after 3 months of nothing but David's 100-ounce bars, and these were the ugliest 100-ounce bars you've ever seen in your life. This group had all this silver and no experience, so they made bars that said 100 ounces. It didn't say 100 ounces of what. But the point is that's all anyone had to sell. But when the mints finally came back online, the Canadian Mint was the first. 3-4 months after all this happened, somewhere around November, right around now, they said, you can purchase silver maple leafs. Silver was $9. It had fallen from 21. They said, but you're going to pay $17 wholesale. So I was buying back maple leafs from people for 17 bucks and selling them for almost 18 to the public. And with an 8 to 12 week delivery delay. That's what finally happened is that, yeah, we'll take your order. We're going to produce it, but you're not going to get your product for 3 to 4 months. And you need to pay up front. And oh, by the way, it's 100% premium. That's what it was in 08, when most of the people who have been flooding our phone lines to buy gold and silver wouldn't even know gold coin if it fell on their foot. So that's exactly right. They knock the price down and all of the availability disappears. And you have to ask yourself in '08, if it was a playbook for what happens now, when they drove the price down, one would think that that is everyone dumping supply. But if the US Mint was out of product and shut down 8 times, if the Canadian and the Austrian Mint were working 24 hours a day, 3 8-hour shifts, and were 12 weeks backordered, if the Perth Mint ran out of product and shut down in July, and the Rand Mint for the first time in 60 years ran out of product and shut down period for the rest of the year, what does that mean? It means that the paper price was a tool of misdirection, and the biggest money in the world is always ahead of the playbook. They always know which way the ball is going, and they gobbled everything up at subsidized prices. And that's exactly what we've been seeing here. Look at the deliveries off of COMEX. Look at the deliveries out of the ETFs, the backdooring. Look at the exchange for physicals. All of it happening. Look at the one whale on COMEX right now, who's long 40,000 December contracts. That's 4 million ounces of gold. That's $7.5 billion in gold with an initial margin requirement over $350 million. The biggest money in the world is front running what's coming, and they are using the levered paper prices to run cover. And the crypto people, to their credit, are seeing this, and they are seeing the value to be found in precious metals only because they've been awoken to looking at things opposite the dollar by being immersed in cryptocurrencies. The rest of the public, who's made all of this money in equities, is going to have a spiritual experience at some point when you see interest rates rise and these markets, which are all inversely correlated to cryptos, collapse. And at that point, I don't care what the price is, getting product will be next to impossible. People can say I'm talking my book. As God is my witness, I am not. I'm telling you, it's coming. It is ridiculously hard. I've done this for 31 years, and I have never had a more difficult time getting product. And the only reason Miles Franklin gets product, maybe better than the competition, there are two. One, I've been doing this much longer than most of the online, if not all of the online companies, and I have relationships. But the only way you get product in this industry right now is to have relationships, is to buy huge amounts, pay for it well in advance, have the ability to run logistics on that and hedge it. If you don't have that, you're dead. You watch every coin dealer in the country, the small coin shops, they'll go out of business because they can't get any product. Because the one defining factor of a precious metals bull market is that it centers around people's concern, and nobody is selling anything. No one's going back into fiat. And that's why this market will very quickly grind to a halt if you see an awakening. If you see, oh my gosh, it's time to buy gold and silver by the public, it's over. And there's been a lot of that, but only a very minute portion when you take the whole picture into play. The hard asset people have grown and swelled, in large part because of what you're doing, Rob, and others out there, and you, Chris, getting the word out to people. But it's still only the pimple on the elephant's ass. And when the people really wake up to looking for a solution, for an alternative, it'll be well past the ability to get anything in a timely fashion and at a good price.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andy. And I appreciate your reports, because I think you give honest reports on, what you're seeing, and also historically what happens in gold and silver, which is why we like having you on, of course. And we're also a big customer of Miles Franklin. We love Miles Franklin, do business with you guys all the time. You and I were talking at Silverfest, and we were talking about above ground supplies of silver in particular. Yeah, supposedly there's 100 million ounces in registered on COMEX. We're just talking registered, not eligible. Eligible is private storage. You take eligible out, but it's fallen below 100. It's like 96, 97 million. Money's been taking that silver off gold too, but let's talk about silver. We talked at Silverfest about one event, like what happened in January, February, the SilverSqueeze. One event could liquidate silver like that.
Yeah.
Is this that event, or do you think that's the pre-event? In other words, do you think it's going to take a big default for that to happen? Or are you seeing that run on silver now to where you may not be able to get it like a month or two from now?
Well, I mean, look, one of the reasons that I have not cared about the price is because what I see on COMEX, the massive drawdowns. You say there's just under 100 million, but last year there were 300+ million in deliveries, 3 times what is there.
Yep.
So this is nothing. And when I see the biggest money in the world, they always front run what the public does. They're always ahead of the game, even if it's counterintuitive to what the price is doing.
And let's real quick, let's point out to illustrate that the COMEX is the big guys. It's not the small guys. Even though it determines the price, that's not retail. So what we see happens on COMEX first, you know, Andy, that's what's coming to the retail market, right?
Yeah, and I say it to you because in the 30 years I've done this, I've never seen deliveries off of COMEX that amount to anything that were even noticeable. Yeah. You know, the 300 million ounces is nearly a decade's worth of deliveries. And I don't know what the numbers are this year on deliveries, but I believe they will approach or better last year's. And so when you see the biggest money in the world draining COMEX, and you see the lengths to which they're doing this by pulling it, backdooring it out of SLV and doing the exchange for physicals in so many ways that are, I guess you could say, kind of clandestine, if you will. They're kind of making it difficult to see what they're doing. To me, when I see what's happening on the retail side, that's not as important as what's happening with the big money. The big money is in front of the public, but I will tell you this. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about getting supply. I really am. I mean, I think it can shut off like that. And I say that to you. Rick Rule has always talked about 0.5% allocation. He just said it again recently that by his measurement, the public in the United States has a 0.5% allocation to precious metals. But in 1980, that was 8%. When you had last time you had the Dow and gold cross at 850. What happens if it goes just to its 40-year mean of 2.5%? That's a 5-fold increase in demand. And in a period of a week, there would be nothing left. So when you put it in the context of the biggest money in the world is front running massive amounts off of COMEX and the commercial banks and the sovereign wealth funds and the family offices, what happens when it becomes aware, you see an awareness in the public that they need to get something? Yeah, I think it would very quickly decimate this industry. Do I think this is the beginning? Look, you know, it sucks always being the little boy who cries wolf, and I am. The wolf comes at the end of the story, and I know what's coming. And whether this is the pre-event or not, I'll simply tell you that, Rob, in all of the years I've done this, I have never, ever had a foray into the people that I'm talking to now. I just spoke at a family office meeting in Arizona a few weeks ago. I never would have been asked to do that. I've been in contact with a very large hedge fund who calls me several times per week to negotiate on large purchases that they're making. These are things that in my wildest dreams, I wouldn't have dreamed of. So are we at that moment? I would argue we're closer than we've ever been in 30 years, and it'll happen in a blink of an eye. The mints are the model of inefficiency. They can't keep up with it as it is. They've never been able to keep up with it. And it's going to happen really, really, really fast when it does. So I don't know if this is the event, but I take comfort, at least in terms of the way that the things that I say to the public, in looking at what the biggest money is doing. Price is a tool of misdirection. Do not look at the price. It's very counterintuitive. They're holding it down for a reason. And what is that reason? Look at the front running. Look at the deliveries. So whether this is it or not, Rob, it's coming. And that I do believe no matter what. So you'll wait when we wake up one morning to find a new reality, we'll know it's here. When you see gold in this industry disappear, you'll know it's here, because in the last 2 years, 90% of all the business we've done or greater has been in silver. When it migrates into gold because silver becomes too difficult to get, you'll know we're really, really close.
All right, thanks, Andy. So back to you, Chris. You mentioned the whole food issue, food security issue. You know, that's something when I talked to Fernando Aguirre, who lived through the Argentinian peso crisis in 2000, money was a concern. A bigger concern was food, supplies, everyday goods. How concerned are you with the supply chain issues we're having and the potential for a couple of black swans hitting all at once in the financial sector for food security? And you know, what do you recommend to your subscribers and how to deal with that type of issue?
Well, that's why I brought up the fertilizer and the food shortages and all that, because, you know, in history, when food prices go to 40% of a man's paycheck, rent doesn't get paid.
Mhm.
And we're going there fast, guys. I mean, food is going, it's going up 20%. Most everything.
Thanksgiving turkeys are up 20%, 27% year over year. So Thanksgiving is going to be a lot more expensive this year.
And
a
it's
lot
not
of that,
included in the CPI.
It's
either.
not in the
Like,
CPI.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's like 3 times. It's like if somebody calls you and said, "Hey, I'm going to be an hour late," and they're 3 hours late. You know, it's so crazy. But that's what I see with food, and they keep papering it over. That's the
Mhm.
problem.
Mhm.
You got to think about the guys that I work with and I'm around, and I poll everybody because I'm just trying to help anybody that walks up to me, just see where they're at and what they're thinking about. And I can tell you, they're not thinking about buying a piece of silver because they've been talked out of it. I've been telling them for a year or 2 years or longer than that, but really hard lately, you know, get a little gold and silver, protect your wealth. You know, I'm on that side. And the last time I mentioned it, he said, "You were telling me that a year ago." You know, that's the world we live in. And no doubt the big money is going to front run the little money. But the little money has been talked out of precious metals as their food is going up. Everything they're doing is going up. And then you combine that with this fertilizer trouble. These farmers are standing in lines waiting to get fertilizer. One plate of food out of every 5 comes from Brazil, and they don't know how they're going to grow food. So that's where I stand on the retail side. Now, the big money, you know, these guys would, and I wanted to say something, Andy, if you would I would like to try to make a video with me sending you some Bitcoin and show people how easy that is. Cause I know several people that have that and have done well with it. And I don't want them to be holding the bag, because I think crypto is going to look like cigarette butts floating around on the sidewalk for a little while, you know, when this thing hits.
I'd be happy to do that. And
I think the crypto future is very bleak only because I've said repeatedly since I started covering crypto several years ago, the governments aren't going to allow it to compete with either the paper dollars or the digital currencies. They're not. And there's this famous case, well, famous to me anyway, case of a crypto trader trading Bitcoin in Louisiana, did it for a couple of years, went to his lawyer, went to the state of Louisiana, said, "Do I have to have license and stuff?" They said, "It's not money according to state law or federal law. It's not defined as money at the time he did it." He got a call from people in government who said, you're operating as a money services business. He got a lawyer. The lawyer pleaded guilty. The stupid ass thing his lawyer did was pleaded guilty before he actually researched the law, because that's what lawyers do. They go before the judge and they quake before the judge, and you know, they're idiots basically. I have friends in law school who are told that the judge runs the courtroom, and that you know, a lot of lawyers aren't courageous enough to stand up to judges. Anyway, long story short, the guy went to jail. They went to appeal to the judge before he got sentenced and said, "We want to change our plea to not guilty because we called the state of Louisiana and we looked up the federal code. Bitcoin is not defined as money. You can't put me in jail for operating illegally as a money services business when Bitcoin's not money." The judge said, "I'm not going to allow you to change your plea because that would allow you to get out of the sentence." Said it in the fucking transcript, said, "Yeah, I'm going to sentence you even though this isn't a law." He legislated from the bench and put the guy in jail for trading Bitcoin, even though it's not money. I'm telling you right now, they're going to crack down on crypto. And if you add that on the legislative side to the scandals that are going to come out with Tether, with all of these other stable coins, which are big Ponzi schemes, it's going to blow the crypto space completely up. So to what Chris said, just consider that if you're holding a bunch of crypto, you may want to consider rotating out of some of that, taking your profits and going into something else. It could be gold, silver, it could be buying supplies, whatever you're going to do, but just be careful that's coming.
let me add one thing to that. Honestly, and I am understating what I'm saying for a reason, because I have a lot of things that I've spoken to people in confidence about. But when I tell you that I've talked to some massive crypto holders, and every one of them says the same thing to me. By the end of the year, they plan on exiting. Maybe they see something coming. I don't know, but there's a revolving door at the end of the year. And if you think everyone can make it through at the same time, I got news for you, ain't gonna happen. So And I don't know anything about crypto. I don't, but I do know that that there is a common theme. And one other thing to Chris's point, the reason people have been talked out of gold and silver is because they don't own it for the right reason. They're all too fixated on price. Do not look at price. Look at what the biggest money in the world is doing with the manipulated price. Why is the price manipulated? It used to be because of something called Gibson's paradox, which is the inverse relationship between real interest rates and gold. But instead, I think they're doing it to reposition, and they are using the manipulated price to run cover. So when people say, well, shit, the price hasn't done anything. Look at what crypto's done. Look at what the stocks are doing. I'd be stupid to be in it. That's exactly what the big money wants the public to think, so that they don't get crowded out of their trade, because gold and silver represent a tiny, tiny asset class in comparison to the amount of money that's out there. So it's done so for effect and for reason. And to what Chris is saying, you're doing a great job, Chris, just trying to educate and open people's eyes. But again, it's not about the price, it's about the fundamentals. And most people don't look under the hood to see what those fundamentals are. They just look at the price.
That's the most impressive thing to me, is how the Fed has manipulated this for so long. That is incredible. I mean, it is. And I don't know how long they can keep doing it. How long can they paper it over and keep talking people out of it till it's gone?
Until they can't. And then when they can't, it's a whole new reality, just like that.
But then they've got their new system in place. I talked about that on OTC Markets today. I thought it was interesting. I got invited to a professional conference, OTCs, talking to all of the small and mid cap, people that buy in the small and mid caps on the OTCs that came to that conference. And I'm talking about the next financial system. I don't know if a lot of them, traditional stock investors, nothing wrong with that. I don't know if a lot of them really understood the changes in the financial system that are coming. When this system blows up, they've got their next system. It's been published by the IMF and BIS in their official papers online. Anybody can view it. I publish those on my channel. We know what's coming, what they're going to do, why they're going to do, and how they're going to do it. They've telegraphed it. So if you guys don't, if you're first time to this channel and you don't understand what we're saying, you don't believe it, go back to my videos on the next financial system I published the last few months. And that I've been writing about since 2018 for my private subscribers. We know what they're going to do. And it's not going to be the system that you have now. And you've got one window of time before this thing blows up and we move to that new system to get your precious metals and to make other financial moves to pay down debt, to take care of your financial situation. So I wanted to ask you, Chris, you run the channel Financial Fitness. What are you recommending? What are you talking about on your channel in terms of people getting ready for what's coming next? We talked about gold, silver. What else is there?
Well, I can just talk about what I'm doing, and I'm selling rental properties. I'm putting myself in a position where I'm not part of the problem, because we cannot, if I can get people to not be part of the problem, we can be part of the solution. Because when we get down to the bottom of the hole, we can kind of build the ladder and get ourselves out. This isn't going to be the end of the world. And when the real estate market, I love real estate. It's so much fun. I really get into it, and I'm talking about it on my channel. And every time I talk about it, I tell them I'm not buying, don't get me wrong. But if you can have everything ready, know what you need. When this thing happens, if I would have been doing it in 2008, it would have really changed my life. And we're about to have another a crisis like that. I don't know if everybody's going to be starving. I don't really know. There's going to be some major food problems. So we talk a lot about food and how to store it and canning. I mean, it's really just natural things you would do when you know there's a problem. Because if you know it's coming, 100%, no doubt in your mind, and you can walk around and see the problems. They're very obvious. Like you said, they're telling us. They told us about the pandemic. They told us about just get on the World Economic Forum and take them at their word. That's all you have to do.
They published the papers. And one of the things that a good friend told me was the way the elites who are doing all the planning for the countries, talk to each other is through books and publications. So you as an individual can go read the books and publications. And if you have questions or concerns about it, you can bring it up with your leaders. All you have to do is follow the trail. It's not like they're, people often talk about these hidden conspiracies and stuff. This ain't hidden. This is out in the open. All you do is read their books and white papers. You know exactly what's going to go on. If you have concerns with it, you can go to your congressman. You can show up at local town halls. You can
Is that
tell your
doing any
friends about
good?
it. It's easy, to figure this out.
No,
Is
some
that
Rob,
doing any good?
you're
Is
one of
writing
the,
letters? I'm sorry, go ahead, Andy.
no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead, finish your thought.
Does that do any good to write letters? They know what they're doing is not working.
I think
So you
it
think writing them
does
a letter?
because I've actually stood in school board meetings and backed them off of some of their policies. If you show up in enough force, especially at the local and state level, they do back off. They're more they pay attention to you more. And I think right now we have a states' rights movement going on where states are fighting the federal government. There's still hope. There's still things that you can do, and you can control more what happens at local and state level than you can the federal level. I think the federal level mostly are on the take. I think everybody knows that. But I think state and local, they don't print the money. They're dependent upon their constituency more than the feds are. The federal Congress at this point, with the way that has been bought off, the way the judiciary is not acting in the constitutional model, and the fact that the Fed can print as much money as they want, means at the federal level, I think we've lost representation. I don't think we've lost it at the state and local level. So there's still things that can be done. Case in point, the resistance to the establishment of the Texas Bullion Depository, as an, having a state issued or having a gold currency. All the states are taking taxes off of gold coins. They can do stuff like that. And so I think there's still a chance at that level. I don't think we've lost all hope there. Go ahead, Andy. What were you going to say?
I guess I have a question for you, and one of the reasons I enjoy following you is that you do a lot of research. A lot of people talk about things. You do the research, and it's easy to talk about what you talk about.
We do the research, so you don't have to right there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's true. And I mean, I'm serious, because when I've had hard questions, I've emailed you, and you really quickly you dug in like it was an overnight homework assignment and got back to me immediately, and that was incredible. But my question to you is, and by the way, I think when all this blows up, I hope people give you the due credit that you deserve for bringing up things that are right there in front of us, but most people are so busy just trying to make it through the day that they don't have the ability. You've made a career out of it. Most people don't have the ability to sit down and read something as horrendous as a paper from the International Monetary Fund. I mean, it made you fall asleep. If you need to read yourself a good night story and fall asleep before you reach the bottom of the first page, maybe. You've been able, as an ex-auditor, to go out and do the tough research. My question to you is this: I'm going to turn the tables and ask you a question.
Okay.
One of the things that I've talked about for the last 2 years and used a lot of your information is gold as a tier 1 reserve.
Right.
Do you think that the next system involves gold? Do you think that gold will be an underpinning to a new financial system in order to give it some sort of credibility to a world that's lost faith in currencies?
100% yes, because, and I said this at the OTC, I talked about Basel III. Basel III is a whole set of rules written that the BIS wants the world to follow, and as the BIS says, the central banks do, and the governments do, wants to follow regarding liquidity in the banking system, but they have a couple of provisions around gold. NSFR is one of them. In all of that documentation, what Basel III does is it says, if you have allocated gold, meaning you really have it, not the crappy London OTC market or these unallocated, but real gold allocated form, a central bank owns it, a commercial bank owns it, and you hedge it in the futures market to reduce price risk. Just like you do, Andy, you're hedging your inventories to reduce your price exposure. Right. If you have that, it's equivalent to cash, whether it be digital cash or regular cash. It is the highest quality asset. It's called an HQLA, or a high quality liquid asset. Gold is the highest quality liquid asset in the new system. And that's why the central banks have been hoarding it. Not so much the Fed, but the smart central banks around the world have been hoarding it since 2009, 2010. And that's why the big wealthy holders that we talked about early in the presentation are taking it off the COMEX as much as they can, because it's going to be recapitalized. They're going to recapitalize the banking system using gold and the new digital currencies. So they're going to sit side by side. That's why they don't want you to have it. They want it all. They want to give you the central bank digital currency, which they can control electronically how much that's worth, but they want to use that gold and their SDRs, which is their version of cash at the sovereign level, to capitalize the system. So gold plays an incredible role. And if you happen to hold a little bit of it, it's going to be worth an absolute ton when that revaluation comes. You're going to have the crash first, in my opinion. Then they're going to say, well, that system didn't work. We need a new one. Oh, look at all this academic research by the IMF and BIS. Let's use that system. Oh my gosh, what a great system. And boom, revalue gold. And that the currencies are going to get recapitalized with the new gold amount. They're going to absolve all of the debt issues. They're going to get rid of the existing debt system and just go straight to electronic money with no debt limit controls whatsoever. That's a system proposed by the IMF and BIS. So 100% yes, I do. Based on my research from all of these architects of the new system, that's exactly what's going to happen for gold.
Let me put it to you this way. I've been saying the same thing for the past year and a half. You are far more eloquent than I am. But if you could suck out of my brain exactly the way that I think it's going to play out, it's exactly that. And I just hope that guys like you are given your due credit for telling the world that this is going to happen, because I believe it in my soul that that's exactly how it plays out. And I think the biggest mistake people make is that they are too affected by price. If we were seeing the price action that we were seeing, which is very counterintuitive, and guys like what Chris was saying, well, you told me this a year ago. Yeah, I did. You're right. If I didn't see the huge accumulation, as you're saying, by the commercial banks and the central banks, and now the offtake off of COMEX by the sovereign wealth funds, this group called the others, which are believed to be sovereign wealth funds and family offices. If I didn't see the tremendous amount of offtake, I would be less convinced. But I think, to me, the handwriting is on the wall, and it is really, really very clear. So I guess I would just encapsulate this by saying to everyone out there, do not look at gold and silver as an investment. It is wealth. The biggest money in the world is looking at it that way. It's been wealth for 5,000 years that have outlived 2 world wars and German hyperinflation and the Great Depression and every pandemic, and it's still immutable wealth. That is how you need to look at it. And I'm honored to be able to have the access to ask you these questions, because there are very few people out there who get it. And when I talk about gold as a tier 1, a lot of people say, yeah, right. So do you think that January 1st, it all changes, it all blows up when it's supposed to shift, when the Basel III NSFR requirements go into effect here in the States? Do you think that's when it starts to really change?
Yeah, I think in June of this year, Europe became compliant, the COMEX became compliant. Now we're waiting on London. London is the biggest derivative market of them all. It's a granddaddy of them all in the gold markets. That happens in January. I do think it changes quite a bit. I do think there's going to be tremendous pressure on them to either revalue gold or for London to exit the market. I think those are the two choices. Either you revalue gold or London gets out and it moves to China. I don't know what's going to happen. I know London has basically begged the Fed and begged everybody, the European Central Bank, for this not to happen. So I think Basel in Europe is trying to take control of that gold market from London. I think it's a big geopolitical power move. And I think the effect of it's going to reverberate across the gold world. And I think it is going to cause people to reevaluate gold as an HQLA, the high quality liquid asset you were talking about. And I think that's when the process begins. We also have to see how this plays out with the central bank digital currencies. They have to be careful, Andy. They can't completely let gold completely run in January if they're not ready with the central bank digital currencies. So I think to some extent they're losing some control of the system. They're losing control of the narrative. And so it'll be interesting to see the next 3 to 4 months what happens. I do think gold and silver are going to continue to smash up, but how are they going to control it? Their grand plan, I don't think they wanted to implement yet. I think they brought it forward probably 10 years. And I think why is because the 2008-2009 crash. Their system, because of the internet, because of awareness, there are enough people aware that we've undermined their system so much that they're now panicking. So it'll be interesting to see in January, do they lose control? If they lose control, gold goes bonkers. And that's the key. Do they lose control? And we don't know. We're just going to have to pay attention to it.
So do you think that gold gets revalued? Is there a price there? 15 to 50,000? Is there, I know it's hard
If
to
you
do.
look at all the world currencies on a world level, gold would have to go to something like $50,000 an ounce.
Okay, so it goes to 50 grand an ounce,
Yeah.
and you take it to go cash it in because you want to buy food. So you go swap it for a CBDC, right? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I don't think they want individuals to hold gold, and I don't know what that part of the system is. But yes, if you're going to exchange it for a fiat, it's going to be a digital dollar. But remember, negative interest rates in the system. Let's say you sell your gold for 50,000, they may want to give you 30,000 because
Right,
that's negative
sure.
interest rate. So what you got to do, I think there's going to be a way for you to get more value for your gold, but you may not want to go to you may not want to go to the bank to do it. You may want to go to your local coin dealer or people that you know. But
Yeah.
I think that's silver's importance, because if you're walking up to somebody with $50,000 worth of gold, how easy is that going to be to exchange? You can do it. I think gold's going to be used to buy other assets, real estate, pay off your house, mortgage, stuff like that. I think silver is what you're going to use to exchange at the store. Or, as one of my subscribers said, in Venezuela, what they're doing is they're shaving off gold. So you have gold, you shave off a couple of flakes, like they do in medieval times. And that's how you make your payment, is a shaving. So we could see that. Yeah. All right, last thoughts for everybody before we log off. I know we've been going almost for an hour solid here. We had David Morgan join us early. We have Chris from Financial Fitness, Andy from Miles. Any last thoughts on risk contagion, precious metals before we sign off? I'll start with you, Chris.
I would say get some food. It depends on where you're at financially, 10 to 50% of your portfolio for gold and silver, and brace for impact. If you've got some assets, liquidate half of them and pay the other ones off. Just be ready, because when it happens, it's going to be the most exciting thing that's ever happened in anybody's lifetime. And this is going to be wild. And don't be part of the problem. You can be part of the solution.
Thank you, Chris. Andy, any last thoughts?
Yeah, we always talk about an event happening, and an event, whether it be, the Saudis are now being protected by Russia, a joint military cooperation agreement. No one's really talking about that. I look at it as a massive event. The dollar's been given the petrodollar status since 1974 because we protect the Saudi kingdom. And now, out of nowhere, of course, our media doesn't talk about it, Russia and Saudi Arabia strike a joint military cooperation agreement. They do it again the next day with Nigeria. So you have the two biggest OPEC producing countries in the world now being protected by Russia, who then announces they have hypersonic ICBMs in all of their nuclear powered submarines, which is their way of saying, don't fuck with us. These are the missiles that circle the globe really quickly and hit the ground at the speed of an asteroid. I think the world is changing, and we talk about these events, these seminal moments. Maybe that's what it is that triggers it, or maybe it's just the fact that people wake up and realize, my God, we've been lied to by our politicians, that inflation really isn't transitory. It's here, it's structural, it's here for the foreseeable future, where people just all of a sudden wake up and have a realization that the dollar is dying, it's a hot potato, and very quickly try to reposition themselves into something a little bit more stable. And if people just actually listen to what you said about what you believe the system is, and I believe it too, that it's destined to move to something backed by gold. This is why it was reclassified. This is why the banks are accumulating it. Remember, it's not an investment, it is wealth. And if this is your last chance, because the biggest money has been tiptoeing out of dollars, using the price to misdirect, nothing to see here, folks. Keep looking at the equity markets and the cryptocurrencies that are going to the moon, while we scoop up the gold and silver when no one's looking at subsidized prices. I don't know, man. I think this is a pivotal point. It really, truly is a pivotal point. And if any of this comes true, the way we think, whether it's a seminal moment like Saudi announcing we're now taking oil and other currencies, or just the realization that inflation is structural and it's not going anywhere, and supply chain problems aren't going anywhere, and there's going to be problems in the system. There are very few places where you can go and find a life raft as the boat goes down. And I don't know, I just, I really applaud what you're doing, Rob, and I'm honored to be part of it, a little part of it, because I think that people need to wake up and look at not making a whole bunch of money, but preserving what they've worked hard their whole lives to obtain. So, Yeah, I think this is real for the very first time. And one last thought, and it's a bummer to always lately talk about pessimism, but there's a fine line between pessimism and realism. And we have, for a very long time, lived above our means by the good graces of our foreign creditors. And I think those days are coming to an end. Honestly, I really do. So get some gold, get some silver, get some food, get prepared. And hopefully I'm wrong. And if the worst case is that you bought some gold and silver, which have been viewed as wealth for 5,000 years, you pass it on to your kids, you're not worse off for the wear. But if all of this collapses and implodes and you can't get anything, you're going to wish that you listened to me and to you and to Chris and to David. And because I think it's real this time, Rob, I really do. So
this time is different. That was the presentation this morning I gave the OTC, and we did privately for our supporters on Patreon. So it sounds like both of you guys to end up are saying we're going to have to pay the piper. All the stuff that we've been living off for years, it's time to pay the piper. And for those of us to get prepared, we have to pay the price for our large living the last 50, 100 years here in the United States. So I wanted to thank Andy, wanted to thank David, who had to log off. He had an appointment, for joining us on the spur of the moment. Thank you so much, David Morgan. Thank you, Andy, for joining the program. Chris from Financial Fitness, we appreciate you, buddy. We'll have you on more as well. Thanks everybody for joining us on Gold Silver Pros. We had this special roundtable just because of all the stuff going on right now in the industry, to give you a place to talk about it, to give you a home, because I know a lot of times when you're talking with your family and friends, they don't see what's going on, but you have a home right here at Gold Silver Pros. So we appreciate you sharing that with us. Till next time, it's Rob Keynes of Gold Silver Pros.
Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. We appreciate it. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification button so you get those notifications when new content comes out. If you like what we're doing here, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Those members of Patreon will get extra special content delivered to them as well.